was there for me at a time when I really needed it. And I won't get into too much details, but if you want to, you definitely can. And he's done that for other people as well. And Mike's a real cool dude, and I'm proud and happy to call him a friend. So Mike, thanks for joining me. And how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Had a really good day, great weekend. Got to do a little trick or treating with my 3-year-old daughter yesterday. This was probably like the best Halloween that we've had because as she is getting older and older and older, she's having more and more fun with Halloween, and so I get to experience that with her, man. I get to see it from a whole different level, so it's been pretty cool.
What'd she go as?
So she again this year she went as Marshall from Paw Patrol 2 years in a row.
Oh,
That's like
wow.
her favorite. It's not even her favorite show right now, but it's her favorite costume that she has.
Okay.
So I think the day before or 2 days before at preschool, she just dressed as Elsa. Like she just wanted to wear an Elsa dress from Frozen and wore a crown. Just wore that to school. So
Awesome.
that's my daughter.
My daughter Emily, she's 9, and she went as a princess, and she picked out the costume, and it looked really cool. I haven't put any pictures on my Facebook. I'll have to do that. But yeah, that's awesome. And 3 years old, that's so cool. Did you guys get to go last year?
We did, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
because I know a
because
lot of people. It was canceled here. Like,
yeah, so we're on a military base,
okay.
and our the pandemic was fairly controlled here, so our base commander gave us rights fairly quickly. Not I don't want to say rights. He gave us, he opened things up a little bit quicker than maybe the surrounding cities opened up. What was still with some pretty good restrictions. Something like Halloween is so important to the community. They didn't want to take that away.
Well, that's
But
cool.
they had certain rules, like you had to stick to your own neighborhood. You had to stick to your own neighborhood. You couldn't really like you had to give the kids the candy. The kids could not put their hands in like to the candy bowl. Like you couldn't just leave that out. And
Okay.
they had some COVID protocols, and they had some of the kids or some of the airmen, security forces airmen, kind of walking the beat a little bit, making they weren't really like enforcing anything, but just kind of walking around, and everybody was on their best behavior, so it was cool.
That actually, we when we took Emily out, we had the bowl out, and I didn't even think about that, but we just put it out and let kids, grab whatever. And we I don't think we had too many because the bowl was still pretty full when we got back, and we only went around the street. And Emily doesn't even eat candy, so it's really cool. I got a ton of candy. That was
Yeah.
awesome, and some chips, and the rest we're gonna give to our little grandson. So he's about the same age as your daughter. So
Oh, awesome.
so I don't know. We didn't really talk because I kind of want to be surprised on this. Did you just want to talk about your daughter and Halloween, or did you have anything in mind that you wanted to talk about?
I really didn't. You brought up a situation that something that you had gone through,
Hmm.
and it seemed like you were a little down one day, and I was just
Hmm.
like, we were kind of sharing comments back and forth, like screw this, I'm calling him,
Yeah.
and I think that's so important to do. And it didn't take any time, like hardly any time out of my day. I was actually driving somewhere. So I was like, it doesn't really hurt me to give another brother a call just to make sure that they're doing fine. And it turns out you were doing fine.
Hmm.
But you never know in the situations because I recently, within the last couple of years, I lost someone pretty close to me to suicide.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the signs because I'm active duty military. I don't live around a lot of the people that I grew up with. And so I had kind of lost touch with this person a little bit. We had kind of kept in contact a little bit over the phone, but really had grown apart. And so I didn't get to see what they were going through. And one day I just got the call that they had committed suicide. And so anytime I see if somebody's, having some issues or maybe they're a little bit down, it doesn't really take a whole lot out of your day to send them a nice message or to even call them,
Hmm.
which is what I've done for you. And I have done with some other people. I think that's, uh, it's kind of our responsibility as adults
Well,
and as good brothers.
I will say, like you said, oh, it turns out you were doing okay, and I would imagine, relatively speaking, and probably maybe to where you thought I might have been based on the comments that you had read, I was doing okay, but I was really not doing okay. And your call made a huge difference in my day, in my in my life at that moment. I was really down, and it just helped that somebody called me, and somebody that, like we converse online, like we talk every day probably, and we've done podcasts together and stuff, but like you'd never called me, I'd never called you, but like you said, I mean, it's real easy to do. You just
Yeah.
pick up the phone and call, and we don't get a lot of phone calls anymore. So when somebody calls you, it really means something. It was actually the night of the what pay-per-view was it?
It was All Out.
No, yeah, but it was last year in the May pay-per-view. So this would be the first pay-per-view after the pandemic started. They had that awesome show from Daly's Place, the one with the Stadium Stampede, and
Mhm.
I had just randomly my phone rings, and it's the same thing as when you called me. It was a Facebook message call, right? It, and it was and it was this person that I hadn't spoken to in over a year, and I was like, they must be butt dialing me, and so but I picked it up, and it was my friend Jennifer, who some of you may know, and her husband Troy, and they were just calling, and he said, you know what, like, we're just calling to let you know we love you. And I'm like, Really? Wow." And it's like, "Yeah, you know what? Like, this is like we're 2 months into the pandemic." And he said, "We've just been trying to make a point of calling people just recently to kind of share that." And it really meant a lot. And like it interrupted the pay-per-view and it was like right in the middle of spring, the spring stampede match. So I was like stadium stampede match. So I was kind of like in a way, like I was like 5% upset, but I was like super happy to hear from them. So if you like have somebody that you're reading their comments and you think like, hey, you know what, like this person needs to talk to somebody, you never know that what kind of difference you can make in their life. And Mike helped me immensely. And I guess as part of your training with your job, like you said, you work for the military and you train people, right?
Mhm. Mhm. So I lead right now probably a section of about anywhere from 13 to 20 people depending on the ebbs and flow of the year. And yeah, I suicide prevention training, suicide awareness training we have to do annually. Um, but I've never, other than just talking to people like on a daily basis. And I think I've had to call an airman a couple of times throughout my career, and I've been in the military for over 17 years. So it is something that we're aware of, but that's not really anything that I get to act on too much. And I think that's a good thing. I think that
Hmm.
a lot of the suicide prevention and suicide awareness happens long before you have to go out of your way to call somebody, right?
Hmm.
So especially with this people when it's people that you work with every day, you can kind of see some of the signs. And I'm in a leadership position now, and so whenever I see one of my airmen, they're not doing too well, I'll pull them into the office and just kind of shoot the shit with them. And I'd be like, "Look, I'm no longer Sergeant Gilbert. I'm, Mike.
Yeah.
It's just Mike talking to Airman whoever, Mike, whatever their first name happens to be at that time. And let's just talk about how you're doing, because a lot of these kids, they come into the military, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, they got no education, and they talk to a recruiter, and then they leave their family for the very first time, and they're coming to a place they've never been to before, and they're expected to make all these new friends. And a lot of people, especially this day and age, and especially during COVID, it is becoming more difficult to make friends because you're not really out and about meeting people right now. You're more isolated than ever. And so you get some of these kids that they don't really know how to interact with people on a human level and an intimate level. And so you got to kind of get that out of them a little bit and to talk to them and really get to know them. And it's been one of the challenges that I have faced as a leader in the military is to try to learn that, because I've always been kind of the guy where I go to work, and then once work is over, I'm just like, leave me alone. I just want to be with my family, right? But you really can't do that anymore. You gotta give everybody that little bit of extra part of yourself as part of being in the military. So you give more of yourself than you would a normal job, right? It's what's
Hmm.
expected of us. It's what our country needs, and that's kind of what we're doing here. And it's in my position, that's what I have to do to make sure that everybody's okay and the mission gets done ultimately.
Yeah, and obviously that's like super important. And what you talked about there is so key. Like it's getting involved before it becomes a crisis, before like somebody's like got a gun in their mouth, or, you know, a bottle of pills in their hand, or whatever. It's, you know, it's intervening. So, you know, I think that's, I'm just putting this up. This is a
Oh,
national
cool.
hotline number. So if, you know, if people see that, and, you know, hopefully nobody watching is feeling that, but you never know, right? You never know what people are going through. So, um, it's awesome that you brought that up. Like I said, I'm glad, like I brought it up, and I don't know if you had that in your mind and that's what you wanted
I,
to talk about anyways, or you just came
I,
to you, or
bro, I thought I was coming on a wrestling show.
really? Oh shit. Well,
No,
you know
no,
what?
no, I'm kidding.
We'll have, well, you know what? We'll have, I'll have you back for sure. You know, in, you know, whatever, a month or so. I'm going to do 3 of these a week, and, you know, I'll
Yeah.
try to rotate people in and out, and, we'll talk about wrestling at some point, and maybe we'll
Oh,
talk about music, baseball,
dude.
movies.
Oh yeah, dude. I talk about wrestling every single week, and I'm about to add a second podcast to my resume about
I
wrestling.
heard. Yeah,
I don't want to talk about wrestling with other people anymore. I
that's
want to
fine.
talk, dude. I want to talk about life. I want to talk
Yeah.
about music, movies,
Well, the kids in
sports.
Halloween, you know, like that was
Yeah,
cool. You know, that was a couple
yeah,
minutes of us talking about our kids, you know, and like anybody that knows me, like Emily is my life, you know, like
yeah.
she's asleep now, but, you know, like she's a full-time job. And
Hmm.
between her and her mom, like the two of us, like we have our hands full. But you know, she's a great kid, and your girl sounds awesome too. She's only 3. Like, wow,
Julie
you got,
3. Yeah.
how old are you?
Dude, I'm 38. Got
38. Okay.
got started late. In,
Shit.
you know,
You're
everybody's like,
you're
man.
closer in age to my oldest son than you are to me.
You know, it's funny. Everybody's like, man, you got started so late. And I'm like, trust me, if I would have had a kid 10 years earlier, I don't know that that kid would have survived, because I was a complete mess of a human being. Like, a lot of people didn't see it, man, but I was such a heavy drinker
Tell me about it.
when I was 25 years old, and I was just partying and carrying on. I don't know that I would have been able to raise a child properly. I certainly wouldn't have been able to afford to raise somebody properly. You know, thank God, you know, I recognized that I personally needed help, and I raised my hand, and
Hmm.
I asked for help, and you know, I had the opportunity to go to rehab, and to you know, kick the booze, man, which I've been on a
Yeah.
pretty good run. I haven't had a drink in over six. Well, I haven't had a drink of alcohol in over 7 years, and after I got sober from alcohol, I did have an issue with some prescription medication, so that took me about like a year to kick. But I've been sober over 6 years now, completely off of everything.
That's
And
awesome.
if I didn't do that, I don't think that I would have been able to be the guy that gave you that call that day. And
No.
I certainly wouldn't be a good dad today, or a good husband, or even a husband at all, honestly.
I mean, we have obviously remarkably similar, actually, because I had kids young, so that's the difference. But what you talk about, like not being ready, like that was me. And unfortunately, you know, you see that picture in the background there, the two, there we go. The one on the far left, the older one, that's my oldest son, Paul. He's 30 now. So we had him when I was 20. And that poor kid, and his older sister Alicia, like we were not even close to being I wasn't close to being ready for to be a parent. My wife was, and thank God, you know, so those kids are okay, but I was not a good father. And I finally starting to get it right with Emily. So, you know, like she's 9, so I'm 50, so I was 41 when I was ready to be a dad. And by
Yeah.
then my kid was 21. So you know, you're right. And all that stuff you talked about, like I went through all that too. Like I got sober when I was 27. So you know, and I went, you know, I did the whole thing you're doing. And even I think when I talked to you that day, I think you were
Yeah.
either heading somewhere, or you were going
I
to talk to
was
somebody. Yeah.
I was going on my way to talk to my sponsor, and I'm like,
Yeah.
when I saw your stuff, I was like, what would my sponsor tell me to do? And
Yeah.
he would have said, you need to call this guy,
Yeah.
and especially, you know, is he someone that has had some alcohol issues in the past? Well, yeah, I already knew that about you, so
Yeah.
I had to be the one to call you. It shouldn't have been
Yeah.
somebody else. It should have been me,
And
right?
I will say, like, I wasn't even close. Like, I wasn't gonna get a drink or anything like that. But I was just,
Yeah,
I was in a real bad place,
yeah,
and it really helped to know that somebody cared, and that's what I
mhm,
needed at that moment. You know, my wife was at work. My daughter was, you know, she's my daughter. She's not verbal. I know she loves me, but that's not what I needed at that moment. I needed a friend, and you were there. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, man.
And you know what?
Always.
I went a little bit longer, but you know what? I'm definitely going to have you back on for sure. I hope
Yeah.
people watch this and they weren't too bored. I hope it makes people think. You know, maybe the topic next time will be a little bit lighter. The guy that I was supposed to have on tonight, I think he's going to be on Wednesday. So,
Cool.
yeah, and you know him. I won't spoil it for anybody, but I will say, because my guest on Friday is somebody that everybody knows, and it's Promise Thomas. Antonio
Oh,
the Promise
cool.
Thomas. Yeah, so I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I have a feeling it's going to have to do with Shooter Jack, his kid. So, you know, everybody wants to talk about their kids. So,
Yeah.
so Mike Gilbert, again, host of Fight Game Media, Patreon group, Brace for Impact, and soon to be debuting a second podcast. And as well, you can check out the Fight Game Media YouTube channel where Mike's got clips going up all the time, and I'll have some going up too this week. One that I just recorded with Ryan Frederick, where we talk about. I don't even remember what it was we talked about, but I remember it was hot and I wrote down the time. So I'll be surprised when I record it. So for Mike, I'm Paul. I'm Grampa Dez. Sorry, I don't want to break the gimmick. I'm Grampa Dez. This has been, hey, Mike, what are you drinking?
Oh, water.
Water. Okay.
Straight water from the bottle.
Oh, so that you're not going to be the whole Street Profits gimmick. That ain't water.
No,
this is coffee.
I would love to have coffee, Paul, but if I have coffee, there's no way I'm getting up at 5 a.m. tomorrow to get ready for work. It's just not happening.
If I don't have coffee, I don't go to sleep. It works the exact opposite for me. It's like Ritalin. Yeah. So it's if I don't have coffee, I can't sleep. So I will literally have 2 of these a day.
How do you take your coffee?
This one's black. And then I'll have one and one when I want a treat. So when I go to McDonald's, I'll have a 1-in-1, and that just goes down like candy. So yeah. So I'll be back on Wednesday with a mystery guest, mystery to everyone else but me, and Friday with Promise Thomas. So let me know what you think. Hit me up on YouTube, on the comments section, on Twitter at Paul Ace Fontaine. Let Mike know at Get Up Mike on Twitter, right?
Mike Gilbert 311.
Oh, really? Why did I think it was Get Up Mike?
Yeah, because it was Get Up Mike for a long time, but I switched my social media up a little bit. I got a whole new gimmick now.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Gilbert 311.
Okay, cool. Or in the comment section right on the channel you're watching right now, let us know. And these are going to go up live, so I'll try to give people notice, and then you can comment live with us if you want. So I don't know if anybody's watching. I doubt it. But hopefully you'll watch later. And so we'll end, because I think I might have started the recording just a little bit later. So I got to play the cool little jingle at the end. So we'll wrap it up with this. And thanks a lot, Mike, for coming on, and we'll talk to you again. Cup of Joe with Grampa Dez.